mathematically done for those who can understand facts and figures. And I really do think that we must question, as I said, this absolute faith that, see, faith in any form is bad. Whether, if religion is only faith and no principles, it's bad. And science, if it becomes only faith and no rationality, it's equally bad. And then what's the difference?
Yeah.
So the questioning of what is called science but is mere technology, or what is technology and is merely profit, will all have to be questioned. And I think through that process you arrive at some compromise. I know I have a friend called Jean Drez who never travels by air. So he never reaches anywhere. Now I've come by air today. I am not a great technology freak, but I've flown. So we all compromise. And what are the compromises we make and why are we doing it and is it worth it? Are questions we have to keep asking ourselves.
Yes. Ashita, can I ask a question to Madan? Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
So I want to know how you are experiencing, since you work on the ground, do you see this combination of material and cultural aspirations, or is it indeed the case that all aspiration on the ground has become exponentially material? What is your reading of the situation?
See, I think you know, at least in the areas that I work with, Andhra, Karnataka, which are slightly more technologically savvy or penetrated, especially among the youth, the material aspirations are on the growth because they see the same WhatsApp, the same Facebook posts, whatever. However, there is an underlying thread of another thing of saying that among some of them saying, how can I use this for the benefit of my people? Right? What can I do and it's just not a material thing. It is saying, what do I do to develop, to quote unquote, to bring more facilities? For example, one of the things that we've been trying to figure out is how do you deliver basic medicines to the villages? Because some of our entrepreneurs are saying, you know what, in the night when something goes wrong, the primary healthcare center is not open, we got to rush to the town to bring some medicines. Is there something that you can do where we can stock and sell? So I see an intersection, and I think there's an opportunity to influence that.
Yeah.
To influence that thinking, to create role models there, and to create stories, narratives which can inspire people to do more of that, right? And I think that's the opportunity that we have.
But what are some of the cultural or in a sense cosmological mood frames that you are encountering? I mean, what is giving people a meaning and sense of purpose in life?
Tough question to answer that, Rajni, because as you said, there is definitely the fight against hunger, right? Food, putting food on the table.
Even in these states.
Getting the predictability of incomes, right? And sometimes I'm amazed, and which is where I was thinking of a larger education, right? I'm sure you would have seen that much more, but I met a farmer family who suddenly said, listen, my son wanted to do some fancy course in medtech devices, and I had to fork out 20,000 rupees as fee, and I borrowed it at 10% per month from the market. I said, that is ridiculous. Who would pay a college fee in the assumption that this guy will get a job and he will repay that money borrowing from the local money lender, right? And he says, you know, I have my kids' aspiration. I think I'll do anything for education. But on the other hand, I earn 1,50,000 a year, which comes to me twice a year. So the challenges of what do I need to do to, you know, get my children educated because they believe that that's the pathway to glory, but at the same time balancing. So when I asked him, you know, even if you put away 500 rupees a month for the last 2 years, you would have done. He says, when I live weekly and I don't know where my next week money is going to come from, sir, who has the time to think of 2 years? 2 years is a long time off.
Yeah.
Certainly. Sure.
You know, I was in Delhi 2-3 weeks ago when more than 1 lakh of farmers came to protest against, and I was part of that formation. I ask all of you, is it your concern or not what happens to farming in India?
Absolutely.
It is, because if we don't get, if we are not self-reliant in food, India is going to be a pawn in the hands of international trade. ages ago in the 1960s, we got something called PL 480. And we all went up in smoke because we thought India should not import food. Because if you get dependent, and there's Susan George who wrote in the 80s and so many others have subsequently written, but the best way of enslaving a nation economically is to make it depend on import on food. Because that's something you cannot compromise on. You'll have to import food. It's even more important than petroleum. So are we going to now work towards that, and how would you take it if land distribution, there's a competition between an industry and the farmers? Should land be acquired? Because it's one of the most burning issues in India today, that land is being acquired for what are technologically change, progress, development issues, smart cities, for industry, for corporations. You'll have to think about it very seriously now. Really.
Yes. 1, 2.
We know
Okay, go ahead.
we know about these various issues, and our friends talk about this, but when it comes to action, nothing. We talk about with friends, we go to our jobs, we run every day, and then we die. I think it's there with everyone. How do we push ourselves and push others with us? How do we push these students to actually do something? What can we do to not just think but act?
See, this is the dilemma not just of students. You know, you have a horde of techies in Bangalore, we meet, we all have a very vigorous chat, and I challenge them saying, what's going to change in your lives tomorrow? Right? What are you going to do from tomorrow, and what can you do to start with? Right? So the question is a very pertinent, but I think the answer lies within, right? Somebody, you know, and I keep saying that there's a lot of ifs that come in. Oh, if I didn't have my home EMI to pay, then I would have done this. If my boss gives me 6 months off, and I keep saying that, knock off that if. If you talk about ifs and buts, you know, we will continue to be the same way that we are, right? So, and it doesn't have to be a radical change. It can just be one thing that you can spend a minute. So, we actually did it never took off, but I still have that hope thing that, you know, we actually conceptualized something called as one day matram. We said, can you give me 1 day of your life in a year? And how I splice it and dice it is up to me. I can ask for 2 minutes of your time a day. Imagine if 1 million students were to give me 2 minutes a day, and I have 2 million minutes at my disposal, right? What can those 2 million minutes give me? How do I then make those 2 million minutes worth it, right? So a lot of us think that, oh, only if I have my full day, I'm just saying that 2 minutes can you make a phone call to some district collector in Rajasthan saying, why haven't you dispersed the Manrega money that you were supposed to give? And if, let's say, 20,000 phone calls land up with that guy's job 2 minutes every day, will he sit quiet? He wouldn't. So the 2 minutes matters. So I think it just begins by saying, what can I start doing without trying to think of grandiosity of, oh, I need to go change the world. No, you can start doing some simple things. And I love what I think St. Francis of Assisi said, that, you know, you just start by doing what is possible, and then you start doing the impossible. So just begin by doing something, and it'll happen.
May I also tell you something on that? Because I think that it's a simple thing really, that no matter where you are, you can do, and I think you can do even charity.
Yeah.
You can even go and feed, the Francis of Assisi thing. You can feed the hungry. You don't have to do anything which is extraordinarily great, but you do something, and it leads you into larger platforms. And I do think that India has to provide platforms for young people.
Exactly,
That's absolutely necessary, and I think one point is also taken. But when you get that experience, if it changes you, no matter where you are, you will work towards making that place better. And I think the MKSS has had this experience, people coming and working with us and going off and working in various different kinds of moneyed jobs. But their priorities have not changed. They physically want to be better off or whatever, yes. But at least when there's a political debate, they won't give in to oppression, suppression, you know, discrimination All those things are now issues on which they have very clear ideas, and that's a benefit.
I'm reminded of your story that you shared on Dalai Lama saying, "Go be a fly, right? Be a mosquito," right? Maybe you should share that.
The Dalai Lama was asked by somebody, Ki, you're a great man and you've done such wonderful things. What can we all do? And he said that in his typical fashion, he said, have you ever slept in a mosquito net with just one mosquito at night? So they all said yes. And he said, did you get that mosquito? They said no. Did you swat it all night? Yes. Did it trouble you? Yes. When you don't want to, when you think you've had it, it's buzzing next to your ear. You hit your ear, but then there's no mosquito dead. You've got a sore ear. So he said, be that mosquito. And even one mosquito can make it hell for people. And I think that's the story of conscientious work in society.
Yeah.
And that
Very
is
good.
one very good example, yes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
of how you
Work
can
cool.
make it work.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Namaskar, Arunaji. And my question is to you and Rajniji also. I mean, just an extension to what you were just saying. I work with children and youth on child rights and some part of inclusion.
Please, yes.
My confusion is since yesterday we've been talking about inclusion and as today also we were talking about it. And as Ashishji started with something called authoritarian development. If you want a spectacular development, it would be authoritarian mode. Given that, and as we work with children and youth, I find that we are absorbed into very artificial kind of discourse or programs on the ground, and the hardcore questions, and as you said, the platforms needs to be there. My question is, how do we create those platforms? How do we really have places where the real questions related to where are we going tomorrow, and if we are going there tomorrow, what do I need to do today? Those kind of questions, how do we do that? Because I talk about child rights, I talk about also social skills and financial inclusion, and when I talk about participation with children, and we want to have a democratic some processes inculcated into children, they are not welcomed. They feel that why youth at this stage should know about it. But if I tell them about financial inclusion and they need to have a bank account and they need to know how to save, people are happy about it. They want me to do more of that and lesser of. So I'm a bit confused here. And I'm sure there are many of us who are confused in terms of how do we create platforms to really talk about real issues. And as all of you have said, we need to start somewhere. We start and we get misled, or we get absorbed into things which are not really leading the way that we started with. So can you guide us in that?
I'll just be very brief, but we have tried, and I have a lot of young people around me all the time, of various kinds, rural, urban. There is no framework in which they can place themselves today. And the best framework is the Constitution. For me, it's the best framework because it talks about everything I want to talk, and it's a document that was created by 200 odd people who deliberated extensively on the condition of India. And just to interest you in it, I'll tell you that Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, who's hardly ever quoted on the Constitution, said when they presented the Constitution, he said to people that if India does not look at these constitutional values, it fall a prey to every single kind of prejudice, every single kind of division, every single irrational and unscientific thought. These are my words. I have it somewhere, I can even quote his words to you. And he said that if power outstrips ability, these are his words. India will see dark days. So in a sense, we have really, and Ambedkar said, when the nation, creed overtakes the nation as a priority, India will be in a bad state. These things have not changed. So I think what we really need to do is to go to these extremely intelligent, well argued, well debated issues that were set out in the Constitution, and the Shyam Benegal's excellent film, TV film series, and that is we found that very useful. To anyone who says the Constitution was hastily put in and that there is no rationale to the Constitution, his film is excellent. So maybe that's the framework in which we must begin our